Hello students, greetings of the day. I hope you and your family members are at the best of your healths. I, Mrs. Usha Vasani, welcome you all to RKC Online Social Studies class. Today we are going to continue with chapter number 15, The Coming of the British. Today it will be part 5. So let's begin with the learning of today. Students, in first 4 videos, let's get connected first to what we have already studied. So in the first 4 videos we studied about first we began our studies with knowing our own country. Then we discussed about the 3 different periods of Indian history. We discussed who discovered India. Then we talked about the advent of different Europeans to our country. Then we also discussed the episode of Battle of Plassey. Then was Battle of Buxar, which was very famous in Indian history. Then in the last video, we saw about the discontent of Indians after the colonial rule had established. So there was uprising of a revolt, means people now they started realizing that they were being ruled over by somebody else who was not basically an Indian. So there was a situation of rebel in the country. So that is what made the uprising of revolt. So in today's learning, we are going to know in detail what was the uprising of the revolt, meaning what were the causes behind the revolt. Then we'll discuss about the failure of the revolt. Though being a failure, this revolt was a turning point in the history of India. So in today's learning, we are going to discuss about all these points in detail for our better understanding. Children, I hope you all are trying to cultivate or create your interest in history, as this is the beginning of your learning of history. So we are going very slow episode wise so that you can understand each and every episode in detail. I hope you are finding it interesting. So let's begin with today's learning. Students, now let us first get connected with today's learning. If you remember, we discussed that British had become very ambitious and wanted to take, basically they wanted to take control, complete control over trade by defeating the European rivals, and also they wanted to take over the charge from different princely states also. They already fought Battle of Buxar and took the charge of Bengal from the Nawab. They imposed heavy taxes on farmers and forced them to grow cash crops like opium, indigo and cotton. Basically, they would purchase the crops from the farmers at very low prices and sold them at very high rates in England and other countries. British also bought raw materials from India at cheap prices, and for making cloth, they used to send it to Britain and then again get them, means they would manufacture there, get them back and sell them in Indian markets at high rates. So the Indian markets were also they were going down. People went into more and more poverty. The handicraft industries also were on the verge of getting completely finished. The handloom industries of India suffered. The weavers also had become jobless, and the poor people started getting more and more poor. So now let us get connected with today's learning. Today we are going to start with that at that time British almost governed two-thirds of the subcontinent, means not only India, but even other parts of the subcontinent were ruled in uh, by the British. Now let us talk about the myth of 18th century. That is the middle of 18th century, means before the revolt began. That is the before almost 1840s and 1857. In between that period, there was different form of nation what we see today. It did not exist as the country, but instead it consisted of different territories controlled by a variety of rulers, means uh, Marathas, Mughals, um, then the kings in the South India, Cholas, and all, like every territory was actually ruled by different kings. They were the rulers used to look after their own territory. The greatest of these was the British East India Company, which governed two-thirds of the subcontinent. Now, originally formed in 16th century, that is, I'm talking about the British East India Company. It was actually formed in 16th century just to purely do the trade. The company needed to secure its commercial posts at Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras because they were port. They wanted to put their offices there because it made easy for them to trade, to load and unload the ships. They purchased land from the Indian rulers to build its settlement on and recruited Indian armed forces to protect them. Eventually, this evolved into the Bengal, Bombay and Madras armies. Means now there were the armies named as Bengal Army, Bombay Army and Madras Army, and they were all actually ruled or controlled by the British. One of the important events of Indian history is the revolt of 1857. Today we are going to discuss about it in detail. It was the first rebellion against the East India Company which took the massive form. So let us know about it in detail. First of all, let us discuss about the causes of the revolt of 1857. There were political, social, religious, economic, administrative, and military causes behind the revolt. So let us see each one of them in detail. The political causes were the two policies which are introduced by Lord Wellesley, that is subsidiary alliance policy, and another introduced by Lord Dalhousie, the policy of doctrine of Lapse, that was the policy of annexation. For Lord Wellesley's policy, that is subsidiary alliance policy, the ruler would keep a troop of British army and they had to pay them. He would not enter into, means the king was not allowed to enter into an alliance with any other king without the permission of British. So automatically, under the policy of subsidiary alliance, the king were controlled by British. Now Lord Dalhousie's policy of annexation, that is the doctrine of Lapse, had made the Indian rulers very angry and insecure because he enabled the British to take control over any state if its ruler died without leaving a natural heir. They were not permitted to adopt a son. The kingdoms of Jhansi, Nagpur and Satara were annexed under the doctrine of Lapse. Means Jhansi was a very noteworthy incident of Jhansi. Lakshmi Bai did not give up till last and she was not allowed to adopt a son. So there were political causes also for the discontent or for the cause of the revolt. The social causes were the practice of sati was abolished. Widow remarriage was encouraged, child marriage was not allowed, interference of British in Indian social customs created discontent among the rigid mentality of Indians. The common people did not appreciate these changes in social customs and the westernization brought by the British. So the common people also felt very discontented, and they did not appreciate much of these changes which they were forced to change in their customs. So even the common people were unhappy with British. A major cause of the outbreak of the revolt was the fear among the people, that is, common people, that the British government was determined to destroy their religion and convert Indians to Christianity. The economic cause was the British had drained India of all her wealth and natural resources by selfish economic policies. Military causes: immense discrimination between the British and the Indians, and this was a major issue of the beginning of the revolt. Let us elaborate it and understand in a little depth. The Indian soldiers, that is the sepoys, helped the British to establish their empire in India. But instead of receiving awards or promotions, they were humiliated by the British. There was a discrimination between the Indian and the British soldiers. The highest pay given to an Indian sepoy was less than the minimum pay of a European recruit. The Act of 1856 made it compulsory for new recruit to serve overseas. In Hinduism, it was not allowed to cross the sea. So Hindu sepoys felt that British are trying to change their religion. Indian sepoys could not rise above the post of Subedar, and they were also not given extra allowance for serving in other countries. Moreover, the Indian sepoys, they had to serve in other countries, and they were not allowed to wear their caste marks like tilak or turban or keeping beards. So there were many reasons behind their getting annoyed or feeling humiliated by the British people. Students, I hope you all must be clear that there were many causes behind the revolt of 1857. The revolt was also known as Sepoy Mutiny. Why was it called as Sepoy Mutiny? Let us understand that and make it very clear. The main persons behind this rebellion were the soldiers. That is why it also came to be known as Sepoy Mutiny. The revolt did not remain limited to the soldiers. Later it spread and took a massive form. Some people also called it as India's first war of independence. The revolt was started on 10th May of 1857 in the town of Meerut. Though in some places fractional clashes began before that. The first martyr of 1857 revolt was Mangal Pandey. He attacked his British sergeant on 29th March 1857 at Barakpur. Now let us understand in detail that who was this first martyr who made a mark in Indian history. Let us understand about the Sepoy Mutiny also in detail. Children, now let me introduce you to the first martyr of the revolt of 1857. Now let us first know who was Mangal Pandey. Mangal Pandey is famous in Indian history as a freedom fighter who gave his life to free the country from the British Raj. He played a key role in the revolt of 1857, also known as Sepoy Mutiny, in 1857. Mangal Pandey was born on 19th July 1827 in a Brahmin family in Nagwa, a village of Upper Balia district in Uttar Pradesh. He joined the East India Company army in year 1849. Mangal Pandey was a soldier in the 6th Company of 34th Bengal Native Infantry. He played right away prior the outbreak of the Indian Rebellion in 1857. Now let us understand about his journey in detail. Why did Mangal Pandey become the first martyr? Let us know the reason behind it. The British, I'm talking about that time when even the sepoys were working with British army as one common army, but of course they were all controlled by British lieutenants. So I'm talking right about that time. Now at that time the British introduced a new Enfield rifle in India, and it was believed that its greasy cartridges were loaded to the weapon only after biting off their ends, and they had to bit them off by the mouths. Now rumors started getting the rounds that the lubricant used in the cartridges was either the beef of cow or the pork of pig. Now, the cows were deeply respected by the Hindus, while the pork was, it is yet forbidden for Muslims. Thus, a sense of indignation started growing up among the Indians. Now, during that time, Mangal Pandey was posted at the garrison in Barakpur during that time. Mangal Pandey, when he came to know about this, he became furious after knowing about the matter and resolved to show his disapproval to the British. Students, now the Indian soldiers were unhappy because the new Enfield rifles issued to them were believed to be greased with the fat from cows and pigs, and this hurt their religious feelings and they refused to use the bullets. It is believed that this cover, which was greased with the fat of cow and pig, means both. It hurt the sentiments of both Hindus and Muslims, as Hindus are not permitted to eat beef and Muslims are not permitted to eat pork. The Indian soldiers finally showed their disapproval, means they refused to use this cartridge. Now, out of all the soldiers, Mangal Pandey showed the courage against the wrong intentions and planned a rebellion against the British rule. Lieutenant Bagh was posted at Barakpur and came to know that some Indian soldiers are in an agitated state. It is generally believed that Mangal Pandey attempted to incite the soldiers of his regiment to revolt against the British officers and planned a rebellion against the British rule. Mangal Pandey, armed with loaded musket, was inciting his fellow soldiers to rebel. Pandey threatened to shoot the first European he would see. Lieutenant arrived on the parade ground and ordered the Indian officer, Mr. Ishwari Prasad, to arrest Pandey. Prasad, however, said that he cannot catch Pandey alone. Meanwhile, learning about the revolt, Lieutenant Bagh armed himself and headed towards the line on his horse. Seeing him come, Pandey tried to shoot the lieutenant, but unfortunately, the bullet struck Bagh's horse and brought him down to the ground. Bagh then fired at Pandey but missed him, and while he was about to draw his sword, the gallant Pandey, the brave Pandey, wounded him with a heavy Indian sword. Finally, Mangal Pandey was caught and sentenced to death. Of course, Mr. Ishwari Prasad also was caught and also he was punished and sentenced to death. Students, this was the story of the valor of Mangal Pandey. The sacrifice of Mangal Pandey opened everyone's eyes. Every Indian soldier could dare to courage for the injustice happening with them. And this was the reason why Mangal Pandey came to be known as the first martyr of the Indian rebellion or uprising of revolt or the Sepoy mutiny. And he made a mark in Indian history. Now, taking a lesson of courage from Mangal Pandey, the Indian soldiers refused to use cartridges. When they were not given a heed, they overthrew all their superiors and marched to Delhi to crown the Mughal emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar as a rightful emperor. Means they left the army and marched towards Delhi saying Bahadur Shah Zafar that you are the only king of India and we will not tolerate any British rule over India. This is what started a Sepoy rebellion or a Sepoy mutiny, which soon became the first war of independence. Indian rulers and leaders such as Rani Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi, Nana Sahib, Tatya Tope, and Kunwar Singh also joined the rebels. After the Sepoy mutiny, the revolt or the rebel popped out in many different parts of India. The revolt continued for almost a year or so before it was crushed by the British. The revolt was a failure. Basically, it was a failure because it lacked strong leadership and was not properly planned. The British were better armed and organized. Also, some Indian rulers did not participate, rather, they helped the British. Rani Lakshmi Bai died while fighting, and Nana Sahib was defeated. Bahadur Shah Zafar, the Mughal emperor, was captured and exiled to Burma, where he died later, and his two sons were killed, bringing an end to once a mighty Mughal emperor. Almost for 400 years, different Mughal kings came one after the other and ruled over India. So, the mighty Mughal empire came to an end. The revolt was turning point in the Indian history. The rule of English East India Company ended and was replaced by the rule of British Crown. Queen Victoria was declared the Empress of India and it was decided that henceforth her viceroys would govern India on her behalf. This was so because at that time Queen Victoria was declared Empress of India as well as Ireland. So it was difficult for her to rule over three big places. So in India, it was decided that she would be sending her viceroys and they would govern on her behalf. So, children, today we learned about the revolt of 1857. What were the different causes of uprising of this revolt? We talked about the first martyr of the first war of independence, that was Mangal Pandey. We talked about his journey or his story of valor, which encouraged other Indians to fight against the wrong. We also discussed about uh, once a mighty Mughal emperor, how did it come to an end. Then we discussed that the revolt was, though it was a failure, it brought a turning point to the history of India. Then we discussed that the East India Company came to an end, but it was replaced by the British Crown. Children, coming to an end of East India Company does not mean that the British went from India, but in fact, now they were not only the traders, but they were the rulers. Means Queen Victoria, when she was declared as Empress of India, means now the Britisher were the rulers of India. So, this is the end of today's learning. I hope, children, my efforts of making it more and more interesting are successful. I hope you all are getting what I'm trying to convey. So, today I'm ending the session here. I will soon come with another video, because I said that though revolt was a failure, but it was a turning point in Indian history. So the next video or the next learning, we will discuss about how was it a turning point in Indian history. So I end up with today's session. Thank you and stay safe. Bye bye as of now. See you soon with another learning video. Till then, keep learning.